Tonight, these two are heading to the other world, Austin said, grinning happily as he gently stroked his mother's hand. It was truly sickening to watch. His mother was no different, grabbing Austin's hand and saying, "Finally, we can live as a family." I looked at Nancy sitting in front of me, and she had a sad expression. "But are you okay with it? Even Nancy will be gone." His mother spoke to Austin. He just laughed and blurted out, "Oh, I don't need a kid born from that woman. The only family for me is you, Mom." That's right. A child born from such a daughter-in-law isn't a grandchild, just a stranger. His mother chuckled. Austin and his mother might as well go to hell for all I care. I took something out of my bag. I am Catherine Lopez. I turned 45 this year. I lived with my husband Austin and our 10-year-old daughter Nancy. I met Austin through an introduction by an acquaintance. Worried about me still being single at past 30, they introduced me to Austin. Despite being 3 years older, Austin looked young and handsome. It was surprising he was still single. According to what I heard from the acquaintance, Austin couldn't date because he was busy keeping his late father's company afloat. The deceased father-in-law had run a real estate business. Originally wealthy, he built several apartments planning to live off the rental income. However, managing the apartments wasn't easy, and they had very low occupancy rates due to their locations far from stations. Eventually, he left behind a significant debt when he passed away. Millions per building. Austin inherited all of it along with the company. That's why he had struggled so much. But recently, he managed to improve the financing and started thinking positively about love again. I found Austin attractive after hearing that. I respected how diligently he worked. Moreover, I found common ground with Austin, who had been so focused on his work that he had no time for romance. I was convinced that I could fall in love with him. When we actually went on dates, our conversations clicked. And I was also drawn to Austin's seriousness. On our dates, we'd always go Dutch, and he never spent frivolously. I thought of Austin as someone very meticulous. After several dates, we started a relationship. We got married 6 months later. His mother had been living alone, but she was beautiful when we met for the first time. "The fact that someone like you is a Lopez bride is unexpected and quite surprising," she said cheerfully. She was always smiling and seemed kind, which was relieving. Soon after getting married, Nancy was born. As a woman, I savored the happiness I had finally achieved. But such happiness didn't last long. Austin changed after Nancy was born. "I'll be late today. Again." I voiced my dissatisfaction to Austin. Sometime after Nancy was born, Austin began coming home later and later. Sometimes, he even stayed at a business hotel. "The baby's crying keeps me up at night, and it affects my work the next day," Austin would say, but this continued even after Nancy stopped crying at night. Even when Nancy became a grade schooler, Austin hardly ever came home. Seeing Austin like this, Nancy sadly muttered, "My friends' dads take them out in the car on weekends. I wish 3 of us could go somewhere too." At this rate, Nancy would grow up feeling lonely. Finally, unable to bear it anymore, I called my mother-in-law. Luckily, she answered the phone right away. Calling me out of the blue, "What's up?" my mother-in-law asked, sounding concerned. Touched by her kindness, I nearly cried as I consulted her. "Actually, since Nancy was born, Austin hasn't been coming home. Nancy is feeling very lonely. Could you please talk to Austin?" No matter how much I pleaded with Austin, he wouldn't change. So, I had no choice but to rely on my mother-in-law. However, she didn't give me the response I wanted. She sighed deeply. "I didn't realize you were such a terrible daughter-in-law." "Excuse me." I was baffled and couldn't immediately grasp the meaning of what she had said. Then, my mother-in-law accused me. "Austin is carrying the company left by my late husband, you know? It's because you haven't made the house a comfortable place for him that he reluctantly seeks comfort elsewhere." Comfort elsewhere. I froze at her words. Could it be that Austin was having an affair? And maybe my mother-in-law knew about it. Considering that possibility, I was stunned. Knowing how I felt, my mother-in-law seemed amused. "Oh dear, I've let it slip? Someone useless like you don't belong in the Lopez family. Why don't you just take your daughter and leave?" After saying that, she hung up. I was shocked by my mother-in-law's harsh words and the possibility of Austin's infidelity. Austin continued to come home late. I couldn't pursue what my mother-in-law had said. Moreover, I would be at a loss if Austin confessed to having an affair. I had finally grasped happiness as a woman. Moreover, I didn't have the confidence to live with Nancy alone if we divorced. Because I was a housewife. In fact, I had quit my job when I found out I was pregnant with Nancy. When I found out about the pregnancy, my mother-in-law had said, "A wife's duty is to support her husband by taking care of the home, right? Understand and quit your job quickly. After all, your income doesn't make any difference." She laughed. I knew Austin was busy as the president, and he provided well for us every month. So, I couldn't be selfish about wanting to keep working. Besides, I didn't have the confidence to juggle work and childcare on my own. Therefore, with a heavy heart, I decided to quit my job. However, I would come to greatly regret this decision later on. Because since I quit, Austin's attitude only got worse. "You're living off my money. Catherine, just do as I say." He would say such things boldly. Though Austin said this, I couldn't simply agree. Indeed, I had become a full-time homemaker, but there was also Nancy's care to consider. Caring for the still young Nancy was tough. And all the household chores were my responsibility. Due to that, there were days I couldn't sleep. I know we're living off Austin's money, but I'm working hard at home, too. And it's not like I wanted to quit my job. When I objected, Austin looked displeased. "Who do you think you are? A housewife doesn't generate a penny, so you're utterly worthless. And your job wasn't even making much money to begin with." Then Austin glared at me. Wow, that's harsh. I frowned at Austin's extreme words. However, ignoring my words, Austin said, "You've upset me, I'm going to my parents' house," and left. He didn't return that night. And the next month, he cut the household budget. "You don't appreciate what I do for you. As a punishment for talking back, I'm cutting the household budget in half," Austin said with a triumphant smile. After such an incident, I couldn't stand up to Austin anymore. If he cut the funds any further, I wouldn't be able to live. This situation continued for about 10 years, but Austin's behavior only got worse. One day. "I'm home. I'm tired, I'm going to sleep now," Austin said, reeking of tobacco and alcohol, and as soon as he returned, he threw his jacket at the entryway and went to the bedroom. "The jacket smells bad." I pinched my nose due to the overwhelming smell. But then, several receipts from a fancy restaurant fell out of the jacket pocket. Austin, being careless, had a habit of leaving receipts in his pocket. He must have put these receipts in his pocket and forgotten about them. While I looked at the receipts in dismay, I noticed something odd. 2 people. The restaurant receipts were all for 2 people. Austin's company has him as the sole owner, so it's impossible that he was dining with a subordinate. The main business is apartment rentals, so there shouldn't be many opportunities to dine with business partners either. Yet, every receipt showed usage for 2. Who did he go with? I turned pale. And in a panic, I looked for more clues among the receipts. Then, receipts for expensive brand bags and jewelry came out. They were clearly women's items. Could it really be an affair? I had just heard the phrase "finding comfort elsewhere" from my mother-in-law the other day. Unpleasant thoughts raced through my mind. However, I couldn't confront Austin. There was also the risk of him cutting the household budget again. Therefore, all I can do now is endure and do nothing. It's frustrating. I couldn't do anything even in such a situation. I was only left feeling helplessly annoyed. Should I just overlook Austin possibly having an affair? I was tormented with worry. At that time, Nancy approached me. "Mom, what's wrong? You seem down lately." Nancy. Her face looked worried, and it pained my heart. I couldn't keep worrying her any longer. "I'm fine, honey. I was just wondering what to do for lunch since the fridge is empty today." Hearing this, Nancy had an idea. "Why don't we go to a diner for lunch? I've been craving a hamburger." She probably saw a feature on diners on TV recently. We usually couldn't afford to eat out, because I had to be mindful of how Austin would feel about spending the money he provided. Also, I had to save every bit in case Austin irrationally decided to cut our living expenses again. However, even now, Austin might be cheating, enjoying a high-end restaurant with his mistress. While I've been restraining myself from even going to a diner with Nancy, Austin could be squandering the reduced allowance on lavish outings. Thinking about it only made my head hurt more. To distract myself and brighten the mood, I said to Nancy, "All right, let's go to the diner for lunch today." "Really? Yay!" Nancy was delighted. Seeing her so happy made me think I should have taken her out sooner. I took Nancy to the diner near our home. I noticed a man and a woman at the entrance. "It's Austin and your grandma." Nancy seemed to notice too and tilted her head. "Isn't that Dad and Grandma? What are they doing here in the middle of the day?" I watched Austin and his mother intently. They seemed to be whispering something to each other. Something felt off. I spoke to Nancy. "Perhaps your dad and grandma have a lot to catch up on. Let's not disturb them and give them some space today, okay?" "Okay," Nancy responded energetically. Austin and his mother might be discussing something shady. We casually took a seat near them. Austin and his mother were chatting happily. It was unusual for Austin to meet his mother at a diner like this. What could possibly be the reason? I wondered curiously. Nancy also whispered to me, "Dad must have finished work early today." Indeed, it was still lunchtime. It was too early for work to be over. Then, Austin dropped a bombshell. "Tonight, these two are heading to the other world." I looked at Austin in shock. Nancy also looked confused, not understanding what he meant. What on earth was Austin talking about all of a sudden? Austin was stroking his mother's hand with a pleased expression, obviously enjoying himself with a smug grin on his face. It was really disturbing to watch. His mother was no better, taking Austin's hand and saying, "Finally, we can live as a family." Then she spoke to Austin. "But, what a clever idea you had, to sink them in the sea at high tide." She looked a bit surprised. Austin appeared smug. "Good idea, right? It's our anniversary tomorrow, but since I'm busy with work, I told Catherine I made a surprise restaurant reservation for today. She'll be thrilled to go out." The plan was this. Even though our anniversary is tomorrow, he contacted me saying he had made a surprise reservation at a restaurant due to his busy schedule. He suggested that he, Nancy, and I have a family meal out, and during the drive, he would give us drinks laced with sleeping pills. Then, he planned to leave us on the beach before high tide. Just leave them on the beach before the tide comes in, and they'll be swept away and drown on their own. My plan is perfect, isn't it? Austin was quite pleased with himself. His mother nodded in agreement. Indeed, if they're carried away by the sea, it'll be hard to recover them. But why did you plan this now? Austin's face twisted. Catherine has been a nuisance for a while. Living in my house like she owns the place without working. I don't have the money to waste on that old hag. Austin looked frustrated as he slumped over the table. I was shocked to be thought of in such a way. Looking at Nancy sitting across from me, she seemed sad. To Nancy, Austin was her only father. It must be hard to believe that her own father could devise such a terrifying plan. But are you okay with it? Even Nancy will be gone. His mother spoke to Austin. Indeed, Nancy was Austin's flesh and blood. While I might be an outsider, one would normally cherish their family. However, my faint hope was shattered effortlessly. Austin laughed dismissively and declared, I don't need a kid born from that woman. My only family is my mom. That's right. A child from such a daughter-in-law is no grandchild, just a stranger. His mother chuckled. I didn't care about such people anymore. Let Austin and his mother fall into hell for all I care. I took something out of my bag. What I pulled out was a voice recorder. Recently, Austin had been acting suspiciously, so I had started carrying it just in case. I never thought it would actually come in handy, but carrying it turned out to be the right decision. I immediately began recording Austin and his mother's conversation. Like two peas in a pod, Austin and his mother enjoyed repeating the same stories and laughing about them. True mother and son. Naturally, they kept talking about their ghastly plan and laughing as if it was the funniest thing. I would make sure to record everything as evidence. And I even gathered new information. So, what about that company president's daughter? She's still 25, right? Do you think you could marry her? His mother asked an unbelievable question. Apparently, Austin already had a candidate for remarriage. Then, Austin replied with a happy laugh. She doesn't realize I'm married, and I always boast about being single to people around me. I don't even wear a ring. Austin waved his left hand. His mother laughed out loud. Well, it would be such a disgrace to the Lopez family if it got out that you were married to such a woman. You should move on to that young heiress quickly. Austin winked at his mother. Exactly. Plus, my company is drowning in debt right now, it's a mess. I want to marry that heiress and live comfortably. It makes you think the current wife is just a nuisance. She should be gotten rid of quickly. I was appalled by their conversation. To think of harming your wife and daughter just because they're in the way is despicable. Truly unthinkable. Satisfied, Austin and his mother eventually stood up to leave. Well, I better get back to work. As he did, his mother, all smiles, handed him what looked like drugs, saying, "Make sure you do it right tonight." It must have been the sleeping pills. Austin hasn't been to the hospital, so there's no way he could get sleeping pills on his own. It was easy to guess that he used his mother to obtain them. I watched the exchange between Austin and his mother with a cold gaze. After they had completely left the restaurant, I turned to Nancy, worriedly. Nancy, are you okay? I spoke to Nancy with concern. It's devastating for a child to learn that her father and grandmother are plotting something so cruel. Most kids would break down crying. Thinking this, I spoke to her, but Nancy's eyes were steely. Huh? Seeing her like that, I was frozen when she said, "I don't need a dad anymore." Mom, let's give them a taste of their own medicine. Nancy spoke with clenched lips. Surely feeling intense frustration. Understood. We'll do this thoroughly. I won't let Nancy suffer any more than this. I vowed to make Austin and his mother deeply regret their actions. I swore this resolutely. 2 hours later, Austin called me. It's unusual for Austin to call. What's up? I pretended to be unaware as I answered the phone. Then, Austin, sounding cheerful, spoke. Tomorrow is our wedding anniversary, right? I've made a reservation at a restaurant for today. Let's go, just the three of us, you, me, and Nancy. Really? Nancy will be thrilled. I responded nonchalantly. Pleased with my reaction, Austin said, I've set the reservation for 6 p.m. I'll come by with the car an hour earlier, so wait at home with Nancy, and then he hung up. Though I didn't want to involve Nancy, she seemed determined. We'll definitely make them regret this, she said, raising her fist high. I silently vowed that Nancy and I would return safe and sound. At the agreed time of 5 p.m. Let's go, both of you. Austin called out to us from the car. Let's go, Nancy. I whispered to her so Austin couldn't hear. I understand, Mom. Nancy whispered back, nodding quietly. And so, we got into the car where Austin was waiting. After driving for a while, Austin spoke to me. I stopped by a cafe on the way and got some drinks. It's still a while till we get there, so have some. I got one for Nancy too. He handed me a paper bag. Looking into the bag from a well-known coffee chain, there were 2 cups. One had coffee for me, and the other had orange juice for Nancy. Thank you. I thanked Austin and handed the orange juice to Nancy. Of course, Nancy and I only pretended to drink. As per our prior arrangement, we both pretended to fall asleep. While pretending, I could hear Austin muttering to himself. These idiots fell for it so easily. Like I'd spend my money on you for no reason. Austin laughed out loud. At that moment, I truly wanted to grab Austin by the collar and confront him fiercely. But causing a scene would have just given him a chance to dodge the issue. So, I held back with all my might. 15 minutes later. This is the end for the 2 of you. A perfect crime, all set. Laughing maniacally, Austin started throwing us out of the car. It was painful, but I kept silent, enduring the pain. As he was leaving, Austin said, "This is goodbye. I'm going to live with a young and pretty heiress now." With that, Austin drove off. "Nancy, are you okay?" After ensuring the car had gone, I spoke to Nancy. "Yeah, I'm fine. But it's clear now, Dad really did intend to abandon us." Nancy sighed deeply. Seeing her like that, my anger towards Austin bubbled up. Austin had thrown out my purse too, but it seemed he had taken the courtesy to remove all the cash from it first. There wasn't a single bill left in my wallet. Reluctantly, I pulled out the smartphone hidden in my jacket's inner pocket. I opened the app for cashless payments. "Shall we take a detour as planned before heading home?" "Yeah, Mom." Nancy nodded firmly. I immediately called the police. After explaining the situation, they said they would come to us. I told them to stay near our house to keep an eye on Austin without letting him know they were there. Then, Nancy and I caught a taxi and made a detour to a certain place. We decided to go home after that. About an hour later, we finally arrived home. The police were already waiting nearby. The lights were on in our house, indicating Austin was there. After everything Austin and his mother had put us through, I could never forgive them. In front of the house, I spoke to Nancy. "Nancy, wait here. I'll go in alone." But Nancy didn't seem convinced. I was worried about how Austin and his mother might react in their fury. That's why I wanted her to wait in a safe place. Eventually, Nancy agreed and decided to wait in front of the house. I was left to confront Austin and his mother alone. As I quietly opened the door, I could hear joyful voices inside. Looking down, I saw his mother's shoes. Resolutely, I headed towards the living room where Austin and his mother were. I never thought it would go this smoothly. Catherine and Nancy are really so easy. Austin was in a good mood, perhaps because he was drinking. His mother echoed his sentiment. My sleeping pills for insomnia came in handy, didn't they? "You'll thank me again, right?" Then Austin exclaimed loudly. "I'll give you whatever you want if I can marry the heiress." I need to hurry up and make a good impression so I can remarry. Austin seemed lost in thoughts of the heiress, a dreamy expression on his face. It was truly disgusting. Unable to hold back any longer, I spoke up. "What do you think went so well?" Startled by my sudden appearance in the living room, Austin and his mother nearly fell out of their chairs. "There she is! A monster! No! Go back to hell already!" If anyone should go to hell, it would be Austin and his mother after all the evil they had done. I sighed and said, "I'm alive, you know? And so is Nancy." His mother's eyes bulged at my words. "Alive? But those sleeping pills should knock someone out for 6 hours if they drink them." "Austin, what's going on?" "I don't know. I saw them both drink it." Austin argued back. I informed the naive pair. "We only pretended to drink. We heard your plan at the diner. To think you'd actually go through with something like this, it's despicable." Austin glared at me. So you eavesdropped on our conversation? That's even lower. My plan was supposed to be perfect. Austin cried out, clearly frustrated. Then began to hold his head. It was a mystery why he ever thought such a plan would work. Especially since it was off-season at the beach. What if there had been witnesses? Then Austin snapped at me. Anyway, I don't need you anymore. You and Nancy should have gotten a good scare this time. Get it? Just divorce me and get out with Nancy. His mother seemed to agree with him. Yes. You're a nuisance, so please leave. And of course, no alimony or child support. Not that you're worth it. After putting us through such an ordeal, it was astounding they could say such things. Half in disbelief, I told them. I'm fine with a divorce. I wouldn't want to go through something like this again. Austin and his mother smiled happily. Probably thinking they'd achieved their goal of getting rid of us. But I had no intention of letting Austin off the hook. Who do you think would agree to those terms? Come in, please! I shouted loudly. At that moment, a lawyer appeared. Catherine, you coward, using a lawyer! As soon as the lawyer appeared, Austin and his mother were visibly flustered. Before heading home, the place we had stopped at was the lawyer's office. I had arranged for the lawyer to come to secure favorable terms for my divorce from Austin. Meanwhile, Nancy was outside with the police. I had arranged for the police to come in if anything happened. I told Austin. What do you mean by coward? To me, trying to drug us with sleeping pills and sink us in the ocean seems far more cowardly. Austin awkwardly looked down. His mother, unnerved by my statement and the presence of a third party, began to panic. I had nothing to do with this. Mom? Austin was bewildered by his mother's apparent betrayal. His mother glared at him fiercely. I just gave Austin my sleeping pills. It was Austin who actually tried to dispose of Catherine and Nancy at the sea. I had nothing to do with it. Mom, you're trying to escape this alone? We are accomplices in this. While Austin and his mother began to argue, I quickly pulled out a voice recorder. What's this, you might wonder? As Austin and his mother turned pale and fell silent, I played the voice recorder. Their incriminating conversation played clearly through the recorder. This wasn't what I intended. Please, stop the recorder now. Austin pleaded with me, but I continued to let it play. After the playback finished, I asked the lawyer. What would happen to Austin and his mother if I take this recording to the police? The lawyer smiled warmly. They would certainly be arrested. Spooked by the lawyer's mention of arrest, Austin and his mother simultaneously began to grovel. Please, I won't talk about divorce anymore. Just don't file a police report. Catherine, we're family, aren't we? Can't we just continue to get along as before? His mother pleaded with a cajoling voice. Austin and his mother's faces were pale, their hands trembling as they knelt. It was too late for apologies now, especially since they had tried to harm Nancy as well. I was unforgiving. Raise your heads. Are you forgiving us? Hope filled Austin and his mother's eyes. I dismissed their expectations firmly. Of course not. Sign this divorce agreement right now. The police are already waiting outside. Once you sign, you'll be arrested immediately. I shouted and threw the divorce papers on the floor. What am I supposed to do now? Austin was dumbfounded, and his mother immediately started crying. Being arrested is a disgrace to the family. Absolutely not. I addressed them with a firm tone. Why don't you explain everything during your interrogation? The lawyer and the police are already here, you can't escape now. With that, they both slumped in defeat. Afterward, my divorce from Austin was finalized. Austin and his mother were arrested. Although the case was an attempt, it was widely covered in the local news. This exposed them to the heiress Austin had been targeting. And it seems she harshly rejected him. I know about this because Austin and his mother have been sending frequent requests for visits. Could you please bring me some clothes? I don't even have a change of underwear, and I'm struggling." Austin lamented pathetically. His mother was much the same. "Begging for forgiveness now, can you just let it go? I don't want to stay in a place where I can't even eat freely anymore. If you speak up, we can get out of here, right?" she said brazenly. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving Austin and his mother. With the divorce finalized, Austin and I were now strangers. And naturally, I had full custody of Nancy. Austin and his mother were trying to gain Nancy's sympathy since I wouldn't budge, but I thought it would be futile. Nancy had this to say about Austin and his mother. "I no longer have a father or grandmother. No matter what they say, I will never forgive them again." It seems she couldn't forgive not just for her own peril but for mine as well. Nancy has steadfastly refused to visit them. This ensures that Austin and his mother will have a miserable life in detention. They both liked spending money on themselves, and surely they wouldn't have any money of their own now. I've heard that Austin's company is drowning in debt. The arrest is likely to cause his company to go bankrupt. It seems that stopping the bank loans is a contributing factor. Of course, it's all Austin's fault. Apparently, the luxurious life he had been living was funded by those loans. In such a state, staying in detention might actually be a mercy. Once Austin and his mother are released, they'll face a hell of debt repayment. They both had personal loans. The apartments built by his father are almost entirely collateral for debt repayment, and Austin himself is broke. Life in detention is hell, and it will be hell once they get out. Their future looks utterly bleak. Since then, Nancy and I have been living together. We managed to sell the house, and I received a cash settlement for alimony. Austin and his mother are in detention, and it's uncertain when they will be released. I was very worried about whether I could properly receive the alimony because they were so indebted. I'm truly grateful to the lawyer who arranged everything skillfully. I plan to diligently collect child support and seize it, including enforcement if necessary. Despite everything that happened, Nancy remains incredibly cheerful. I've made 5 new friends at the new school. "Mom, have you gotten used to your job?" she asked me with a smile. Nancy had to transfer schools. We couldn't find a good place to move within the same school district, so the transfer was inevitable. Yet, she's making the best of it at her new school. I've returned to my old job after all this time. When I explained my situation to a colleague who had advanced in their career, they were very sympathetic. Returning to work after 10 years, I found both the job duties and the manuals vastly changed, which was quite confusing. But I'm struggling because I need to provide for Nancy. It's challenging to return to full-time work immediately. However, as a mother, I'm determined to do my best for Nancy. Mothers are strong. With this conviction, I continue to face forward each day.